Welcome to Let's Talk Health, powered by VitifyHealth. I'm your host, Miles Wingfield, and today I'm joined by a leader in the clinical research space with experience across sites and startups. She's worked as an associate director and the founder of the Clinical Research Site Collective, with her goal of ensuring the main focus of clinical research is on the research site. And with that, please welcome Maria Ladd. Maria, how are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing great, Miles. So excited to be here with you. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm excited to have you. And as I told you, I'd love to get straight into it. As I mentioned earlier, you've held leadership roles in clinical research. You've worked at the sites. You've worked at as a founder. I'm interested in like what did first initially drew you into this space?
Well, like so many other people, I fell into it. I was working at a doctor's office, and a friend of mine went to a large CRO, and she was there for a little while working in startup. And she said, "You could do this." And I said, "Cool." And so off I went to, work at that CRO in startup as an entry level. And here I am now, 20 years later.
Perfect. That's really interesting. I think look, for most people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, I didn't really know too much about clinical research. I got offered an opportunity and just almost slid down this hill into clinical research. And I think it's interesting that you really echo that sentiment. And I think Well, one thing I noticed just right straight off the bat is that beautiful logo in the background, in your Zoom background. And I know that logo, we spoke offline about it. I know that means a lot to you and you're really excited about that. I would love for you to just share with the audience, what is that logo? What does it mean to you and what does it represent?
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Miles. Yeah, it really means a lot to me because this is the logo for the Clinical Research Site Recognition Day and Week. The day is August the 20th, which coincides with 1947. August 20th was the verdict of the Nuremberg trials.
Hmm.
And from there came the Nuremberg Code, and which really is kind of like the foundation of the ethical standards that we have in clinical research. Um, and so this is people, passion, purpose. So the
Hmm.
people, the goal person, and then the site, and then the stethoscope. So it just sort of all brings it into one because the clinical research site is the foundation. And with that, I include, the participants and their communities. So they're all the site, and without them, we would be nowhere.
Definitely, definitely. And you speak a lot about the community, right? So how does the community really play into clinical research, right? I know that, for example, one community on the West Coast might be a lot different than the community in the Midwest. So how does this community really play into these clinical research sites?
Absolutely. So you need to consider things like what is the racial diversity,
Hmm.
what the lifestyle diversities might be. So some more progressive uh, communities may have more LGBTQ
Hmm.
plus in there. You've got communities that are very rural, and so transportation is a big issue. You've got economic and social norms. There's also things like if you're interested in working with tribal communities, either in Alaska or across the US,
Interesting.
for Indian tribals, then you have to take into consideration what are the ways to best reach those people. So it's not like the sponsor can write a protocol that absolutely, for each community, but the people that are running the trials can reach those communities in a better way, more effectively using the protocol. They just have to be mindful and intentional.
Yeah. So when you say mindful and intentional, what does that mean in engaging different communities? For example, like I think one that really goes under the radar is these tribal communities. I don't hear a lot of people speaking
Mhm.
about that. Can you speak about maybe that's an example that we can use? How can the protocol, how can these different things engage these tribal communities?
So that would really be more of a community outreach, not necessarily consistent with how do you write the protocol for a
Hmm.
tribal community. However, there may be things like you have to meet with the tribal leaders before you would engage with the community, get their buy-in before you would try to work with them and bring them into the study, so that because in that culture, and I'm by no means an expert, just from some conversations I've had with people, so those communities are very dependent on the leadership in those communities, guiding them toward things that they may want to do. The other thing is, a lot of not just tribal, but a lot of areas where economics may be a factor. There may be specific trials that those communities would want within their reach because clinical research can be used as a care option.
Hmm.
So that would be really important to remember in the areas where you may have a lower economic threshold than those that have more. That may not be the same consideration. So it's really up to the sites to know and the sponsors and the CROs to be willing to listen to the different aspects in the communities that need to be catered to so that you get the population that you want.
Yeah, 100%. I think you spoke a lot about that community outreach, right? Especially with this lack of trust from, historical things, and understandably so. It's so important to get these people involved. And I kind of want to shift the conversation. So you're a big site advocate, right? You work a lot with the sites. You really want to put the sites at the forefront. And from what I've seen, a lot of times there's this push and there's this pull from the sites and the sponsors where they're going back and forth, they're butting heads. How do you think we can build this bridge to get these therapies approved faster, get these therapies in the hands of people who really benefit from them by increasing this communication between sites and sponsors?
Um, so a lot of it, I think, well, it's not just that. There are so many factors that go
Hmm.
into how long that it takes. And I do think that with changes in the FDA and with E6R3, we are going to step into a future where we can make it more faster on the processing end, right? And on the back end. But for the sites and sponsors working toward getting the goal met with specific studies, I hate to say this, but a lot of times it comes down to communication and preconceived notions. And so, in a lot of cases right now, it's not a true partnership,
Hmm.
Miles, between the sponsors and the sites, or the CROs and the sites. I kind of feel like sites are a little bit like a speed bump. They're necessary, occurrence in the path toward, the goal, but they're not really reached out to in the beginning as a partner. And I think that has caused some historical things where, as we've spoken about before, like in feasibility, you have people trying to craft the situation to meet what they want to happen, and it may not necessarily come across transparently what each party is thinking. So it could be, um, but a lot of it, to be honest with you, is respect. It's the relationship, respecting the relationship, and actually stopping to realize that a site is a partner and the site has a
Hmm.
responsibility. I always make this clear. A site has a responsibility to have the framework within their facility to actually get the job done, right? So they have to have their SOPs and processes, their workflows. As a business, they need to be ready. But from there, they need to be treated respectfully. Their time is important. We don't need to keep asking them endlessly over and over again, having 20 people contact them for the same things. And this stuff just goes on and on and on. So we have to stop it, Miles.
Definitely, that back and forth between the sites and the sponsors is something that even me being new to the field is it's very apparent. And I think another thing that you really advocate for is these naive sites, right? Because sponsors, they want sites that they've trusted. They like, look, we know that these guys can run a good trial because they've ran hundreds of trials for us. But for people trying to break into clinical research, for these naive sites that want it to be active sites, how do you think that we can get them leverage? How do we think that we can help them win these trials from these sponsors?
Question, Miles. I love that. So first of all, I just want to point out that a couple of things happen in feasibility. A lot of times the feasibility process involves different platforms that will go out to clinicaltrials.gov. So if you have a site that's never done a trial, guess what? They're not in that database,
Hmm.
right? And then the other thing is, if sites are doing outreach, and believe me, if I had the magic bullet for this, I'd be a rich, rich woman. But the problem is that a lot of times sponsors are looking for sites that actually already have experience, and by that I mean the PI.
Hmm.
So some things that could be improved is one, if the site has a seasoned coordinator, then that needs to be taken into account because they really are the heartbeat of the site. And so they can help mentor the PI through their first trial or two. The other thing is, I believe that sponsors and CROs should help those naive sites. One, give them a chance. Two, let's give them some opportunities for mentorship, either through seasoned PIs doing that on behalf of the sponsors or CRO, or if your medical monitor happens to have been a PI before, that's an excellent resource right there. Give them some extra time. A lot of times CROs and sponsors, they keep going out to the same list of sites, 100 sites, 200 sites, or less, fewer, and they keep using the sites over and over again. And to be honest with you, sometimes they're using sites that are not really doing a very good job,
Hmm.
but it's who they know. So
Right.
they're back to the devil that they already know. When in
Mm.
fact, if they would make an effort to get out into the community, encourage sites, the PIs and their staff to get this done, be where you need to be as far as your SOPs, your processes, your workflow, making sure that clinical and research have their proper place at the clinic, right? You can't try to just make one into the other because they are two different things, but that can be done. That's the administrative stuff. Let's not let these PIs who are excited get disgruntled with the process and drop out after a study or two. Now
Hmm.
what? Now we're back
Right.
to the same 20 sites we always use.
Yeah, 100%. Again, it can be, there's so much that goes into clinical research, right? That training for these PIs, for these coordinators, for these people trying to break into the space. It's so important in having them to start these trials because, again, these PIs, a lot of times, if they're already practicing physicians and they have these relationships with the patients, if we can get them the right training, they're the perfect people to run these clinical research sites because, again, they have these relationships. So I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And again, to just shift the conversation a little bit again, I want to talk about clinical operations at sea, right? It's such a fun experience. Sounds something very exciting, right? I would love for just to give this opportunity for you to give a little shine to that and talk about what you're doing with that.
Sure, excellent. Yes. Clinical operations at sea, or as we lovingly call it, ClinOps at sea.
Hmm.
You can go to clinopsatsea.com. And what we're doing is having a conference on a cruise ship, Virgin Voyage Line. And so it's going to be a different conference, Miles. I'm on the steering committee. This was the brainchild of Melody Keel and Jess Thompson, who are both very active in the community on LinkedIn. And they decided that we don't need another kind of run of the mill expo hall. I call it the gauntlet when you're, going past all the vendors. We just don't need to do that. And so this is very intentional. We are having some pretty exciting educational presentations where people will be able to get CEUs either self-reported through SOCRA or ACRP or through for PMs that need, some CEUs. Um, but not only that, we are planning really fun networking opportunities, excursions. People can go out together. I personally will stay on the boat and I will have an excursion on the boat with as many new friends as I can in the pool with probably, a cocktail maybe. But we are putting it together, this inaugural event to be the conference that you really want to be in. It actually, if you think about the cost of it, it's the cost of the cabin is the cost many times of a lot of conferences. And so there is no conference fee. It's just the cost of the cabin. And so we're still actively recruiting sponsors for that. So if anybody's interested, they want
Hmm.
their company's logo and swag and all of that. All of our packages come with a free room. If a sponsor wants to do that or a CRO wants to do that. But we've got a very good mix of sites, sponsors, CROs. Health and wellness is part of our, thing that we're focusing on. So going to be fun. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited to see how it goes. And I think the last question I want to end it off with is I like to end it off with just a piece of advice. So if for someone trying to break into clinical research, whether that be a young student, whether that be someone looking to make a career shift, what would be your piece of advice to give them?
My piece of advice would be ask a lot of questions. I will say that I've had a couple of young people reach out to me and say to me, "Hey, would you chat? I see that you post a lot on LinkedIn. I like what you're posting. I'm trying to break in. Would you have a talk with me?" Miles, I always say yes, because the people coming in are they're the life force going beyond whatever impact I could have. They're the life force of this industry, and they're going to be holding us up with their experience 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? And so what I would say is work the connections, ask questions, reach out and ask to talk to people. There are a lot of, there's CCRC, the clinical, oh, I hate to make myself think like that on the fly, CCRC,
Okay.
um, which is the referral club,
Okay.
Clinical
Yes.
Research Referral Club. Yeah, CRRC.
Okay.
CRRC. There's the social, the research social. Oh my gosh, Ashley Lejeune, kudos to her. She is huge in being helping people get connected. Go to networking events. Not only myself, but other companies are also doing research, excuse me, virtual networking. Go to these virtual networking, go into the room, even if you're nervous, ask questions, smile, introduce yourself. It's really the only way. The very first piece of advice I got coming into this industry was blow your own horn because nobody else will. And that
Hmm.
is true. The enemy is obscurity.
Hmm.
Want you to let that sink in. The enemy is obscurity. If people don't know who you are trying to break in, then no one will ever know who you are. You have to do this for yourself. And after a while, it will pay off. It will pay off. Reach out to
Well,
me. I'll talk to you.
thank you for that, Maria. And well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have today. This has been Let's Talk Health, powered by Vidify Health. If you're interested in learning more about Maria Ladd and her impactful work or the work we do here at Vidify Health, feel free to check us out in the links in the description. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Miles.